remember long conversations with Erwin Wheeler. It's because computer science isn't mathematics. It's different, and it has different ways of thinking about things and different methods, methodologies, standards, lots of wonderful long philosophical descriptions of it, and why it deserved to be its own thing. It was never going to be just a ride-along, tag-along. So we started in that direction, and we were very determined to be independent. You've also noticed that I said programming computer studies, and that deserves some talking about too. So I need to tell you about a book. It's by a very famous biographer by now, Walter Isaacson, and it's called The Innovators. And the innovators are those people who did things along the way that advanced the field tremendously. He talks about the individuals, he talks about the teams of people that made significant advances to the field of computing. And of course, like any decent history of computing, it starts with a woman. But you all know about Ada Lovelace, and the quotes that you may have most often heard. She talked about the nature of computing. She conceptualized it. Now this is the mid 1800s, 1815 to 1850. She got her inspiration from there being a mathematician and scientist. They weren't exactly categorized that way at that time. The word scientist was just coming into use. But the scientist in question was Charles Babbage. You've probably heard that name too. And he had created a machine called the difference machine. And he could do mechanical calculations with it. And he invited people to come in and see it, kind of a salon where educated people that he thought were interesting would be invited to his home on a Wednesday evening to see his difference engine. So his difference engine could do some calculations that it was coded for. And you could change the codes and it would do a different computation. And Ada understood this immediately and instinctively, almost intuitively, the way the stories are written, that she understood the nature of what computing could be. I think probably the most famous quote is that the computer could weave patterns like a loom could weave flowers and leaves and branches and stems. And when she talks about comparing a computer to the machine that would weave, that's even more literally true than one might think, because the loom that she was thinking of at the time, it was a Frenchman, I don't know how to pronounce it, Jaguar. It was controlled by codes, just as Babbage's machine, and these codes were presented to the machine on punch cards, way ahead of its time. So there was a lot of comparison there. At the time, Ada also talked about this machine in the terms of in terms of a machine that could do what you told it to do. She forecast that it would be a general machine. In other words, it couldn't do just one kind of problem, but it could do lots of different kinds of problems dependent on the instructions that were given to it. And even to understand it that way was a major step forward. So you'll see in a minute why this comes back around to Carthage. So to talk about machines that we would recognize as computing machines, we're really going to start at about in the 1940s, and stop me from even going into that. But the machines that we want to talk about are from the 40s until now. That's about an 80-year spread. And I just finished the Isaacson book this week, and when I review it in my mind, it's about the first half of that period that the primary advances were hardware, from room-sized computers to desktops to laptops, and that progression fueled by the invention of the microchip that brought that along. But that's more or less a hardware time. And from then to the present is, again, overgeneralizing by far, a software time. And even the things that we think about the most, the web, the internet, even blogs and chat rooms, how they all developed, were more or less software developments. So in the middle of that hardware to software range, here we were at Carthage in the 1980s wanting to put together this program. And at that time, just coming through this hardware revolution, fueled by the microchip, of course, the public perception, man on the street perception of computing was more about circuits and putting little chips in things and plugging things in, and somebody going to Radio Shack for a Heathkit and working on putting it together in their basement. But that was the general public idea of computing, getting that machine together. And we wanted to be very, very clear that we were not creating an engineering program. We knew that was not within our reach, even if we wanted to, and we didn't want to. That isn't the way we saw what our role could be. And because of that, we called it the program in computer studies. And that first program then, we kept that introduction to computing course as a general course for anybody. We added 2 programming class. The programming had been added along the way, but the programming class, data structures, and Convorg, and finally a database management class. So those 5 courses then made up the curriculum in the catalog, and the 4 courses, not including Intro to Computing, comprised a minor. And we were able to offer that minor from the beginning, and it was very popular. People came to take it at night. I admire them a great deal to come to class once a week. That couldn't have been easy for them. So, we felt good about what had been created, and we felt that we had done it in such a way that there was something to build on. And you, of course, all know that now that has happened. But I need to say just a little bit more about Ada Lovelace, circle back around, and what Walter Isaacson said. He did say in his, excuse me. He called the last chapter of his book Ada Forever. And where is Ada now? And Sarah's smiling because I wrote some of this to her because it was Ada Lovelace Day this week. Isaacson points out for us that Ada's predictions have, by and large, as of now, come true. That Ada was insightful enough that she could see from the beginning that a computer would be a generalized thing, something that could do more than one kind of problem. She saw it as something that would manipulate symbols, and that those symbols could represent anything. And so she had already called computing scientific poetry or poetic science, one of those. And she had imagined that those symbols might represent music or art or poetry or any of those rich parts of life, not just numbers, but very much the world of creativity and originality. There was a question, in fact, Ada's mother thought that this machine was going to be so wonderful that it could actually think. And Ada said no, that it would not be a thinking machine. Now, is this discussion still going on? But Ada said that what was needed was the creativity, imagination, and originality of a human. And now there are wonderful, wonderful quotes from Ada that are all nicely typed out, sitting on my bed at home. And I was so clever because with Mahoney's inspiration, I downloaded it to my Kindle, and while we were sitting over here talking, I lost the page, and I'm not going to make you watch me go look for it. But the summary is that the things of human imagination are about values, are about aesthetic appreciation, are about human interaction, and all of these things are as important as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM things. In fact, Steve Jobs has been a good example of this. I'm told that at many of his product launches, he would stand in front of that big screen, you know, that figure in black with the turtleneck, and the screen behind him showing an intersection of two streets. And there are the street names, technology and liberal arts. And he says from the beginning that we need technology married to the humanities. We need science together with the liberal arts. And at this intersection is where we will find the new innovation. So the predictions for the future from Isaacson are that we will be carrying out Ada's dream, but it has to be from more than just bare science. It's got to be from this richer point of view in order for advances to truly be the kinds of life-changing. And he means, by life-changing, he means things that change how we go about our daily lives. And that those will come from that intersection. And so I think you all were very wise, whether you knew about Ada or not, to study computer science within the context that has given you the wider kind of view that we hope now that you can take. And well, from what I've just heard at my table, is that you, Erlen, over there? And I didn't even see you all. Can you remember when we talked about those things? Yeah. So, you just picked it right as far as I could see, and I look forward to hearing about what has happened in the department with you, for you, together with what you have all contributed as students to the department. And